how your parents, how your grandparents used to, wait now, move that out of there so you
That's fine, don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, but tell the story about how when how your family knew Grandpa's family.
What's this?
Oh, well, I can't tell you how they knew him.
Well, tell how you know, just tell.
Well, Aunt Nell tells me that, now Aunt Nell was your grandfather's aunt. And she tells me that her mother and father, which would be John and Annie, right?
Right.
And my grandparents, which would be George and Lydia Minnick. Okay, this was Grandpa John and Grandma Annie Mathews. And way back, well, years before my parents were married, which would be the early 1900s, they visited back and forth.
Oh, okay.
And Aunt Nell says that they called my grandparents Uncle George and Aunt Lydia. Now, whether there is a family relationship there remains, I mean, I have no idea. All I know is that there were other marriages, and there's a possibility that the Sherrys or the Schroggers, maybe?
Schroger, yes.
That the relationship was there.
Well, Annie Maria's maiden name was Schroger.
Annie, Grandmother Annie.
Yes, her maiden name was Schroger.
But my grandmother Minnick's maiden name was Sherry.
Yeah, but she wasn't related to Scroggers.
That I don't know, because like I say, there were other marriages way back, like second marriages, where there were half brothers and sisters. So that's all I can tell you. What did you want to know?
Well, I just remember you telling that story. It took you a lot longer before, but
Well, then when my mother and dad, in their early married life, lived in Vandergrift, they were friends of Uncle Lord and Aunt Dora, and your Uncle Meade and his wife. They all lived there as young marrieds in Vandergrift.
Oh, we're still.
They all worked in the steel mill. And they were, they knew each other way back then, long before your grandfather and I ever met.
Well, now how'd you meet Grandpa?
Well, we came back to Pennsylvania during the Depression and stayed with Grandpa and Grandpa George and his wife. Now, she was my step-grandmother. I never knew my grandmother, Lydia. Because she died before my mother and father were married. But the grandmother Minnick that I knew was my step-grandmother, but she was a very lovely, she was always just Grandma Minnick. She was very nice and kind. But anyone during the Depression, when if you had relatives living on a farm, this is where you went. You went back home to the farm because there was always a place where you could plant a garden and grow vegetables and can all these foods. No one ever went hungry.
Where was that from?
But we didn't have any money in our pockets. So Grandpa, my grandfather, who was George, lived on a farm.
Where was the farm?
At the top of the Dora Hill in Jefferson County. That's where my father was born and raised. And he had this farm, and when the Depression hit, we were living in Michigan, and my father, or your great-grandfather, worked at Buick Motor Company, and his trade was a drop forge hammerman, which was a skill related to being a pattern maker. He worked with hot metal, and this machine was operated, and the pattern, well, anyway, they made things that were used in factories, such as Buick Motor Company. And then work was becoming more and more scarce, and it was down to the point where they lost their home. All we had was our, well, personal things, like our linens and our dishes and our, things like that. So we left, just that's all you could do. And we came to Pennsylvania to Grandpa's. And he got work in the mines a few days a week, and it was really true. You owed your soul to the country store, because if you made any money, any of the things that you bought at the company store, you worked a couple days, but you had enough credit, to buy these things, and got more.
You started to tell about how you met Dad.
Oh, I met him at Square Dance. Oh, he too. He was working out in Chicago after he graduated from high school. He went out there to work because he had an aunt living out there, Aunt Lottie, and he went out there and after graduating from high school and got a job at Inland Steel. But when they began laying men off out there, the first men to go as worse as the lack of work, jobs available. It was the men the younger men, they're the ones that were let go first. And then he too came back home to Grandpa Harry and Minnie's farm. And Fenwick was there an awful lot of the time, and Don and Uncle Don's wife Beulah and their kids. But they had lots of potatoes and lots of apples and meat and vegetables, canned vegetables. And anyway, that was we met at a square dance.
Where? Where was the square dance?
At Porter.
No.
There was a hall up there at the top of the hill in Porter, where square dances were held.
Grange Hall, wasn't
Something like a Grange Hall.
Where the store was, or the other end of?
As you come into Porter.
Oh, where the levy farm was.
Yeah, kind of up on that hill there was a flat place, and there was a.
Well, you come into
It's a big
Porter
hall.
from where the farm was, forward Crossroads way. Where Leanna lived, you go down in the hollow and start up and on the top of that hill up there where that.
No, this one was on this was on in an area there above where her grandmother's house.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't ever remember that.
Oh, yeah. And that's where I met.
Well, then it must have been Darrell and Annie that met at a baseball game. Somebody met at a baseball game.
Well, maybe I met him at a baseball game, but the first time I ever really dated him, or if you call it dating him, was square dance. He had his eye on me, let's put it that way, after we went to a baseball game. Because they had a baseball team that was, Uncle Don was, it was Mathews to Mathews to Mathews. Uncle Don was, who was the pitcher? Vern was the catcher. And Darrell may have been the pitcher, and Uncle Don was the base. I know Vern was always the catcher. Anyway, they had this baseball team that they had put together. A lot of other people that were unemployed and living back there. baseball team.
They had a ball field there in Porter. They had one in Phoenix.
They had one in Phoenix back this.
Oh, I know where the ball field was in Porter, because it was still there when I was growing up.
Well, do you remember where the one was in Phoenix?
No.
Behind the store building?
And we
It
walked.
was still there.
We walked, you know, nobody had a car. I mean, I don't remember how I got to that square, dance that time, but I was there. And we walked to all these baseball games. I mean, it could be miles from everybody.
Nobody paying
You
attention.
just walked. I mean, it didn't.
Granddad Matthews would give us a nickel on Sunday,
On
once a
Sunday?
month. And we would walk to the bakery and get an ice cream cone and walk back. We didn't think anything of it.
You walked off your calories then.
Huh?
You walked off your calories then.
Didn't do it, I don't know. In those days, I was about as fat
You're
as I
not
was
gonna
now.
put this in. You're not gonna put this in Smithsonian.
The archives wants this. Well, then how soon after that did you marry him?
What?
How soon after that did you marry him?
Oh, boy. Not until he was called back to work at NN Steel.
So it was what? A couple months or a couple years?
Oh, years.
Well, you couldn't have been very old when you met him then.
I was probably about 15.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you were 17 when you got married.
I don't remember what year he was called back to work, but he was called back to work, I would say. He brought me back my engagement ring in May of the year we were married. So, but he had been working at NN Steel maybe a year before that, because he didn't have any money when I went out there. He had to be working to buy it, and it was a diamond, it wasn't a...
Well, now, how about your grandfather? You were telling me about your grandfather.
Hmm?
How about your grandfather and how religious he was? You were telling me that the other day.
Oh, he was a very religious man. He was a devoutly religious man. He, when you were in Grandpa's house, you did as Grandpa did. And when we stayed there, everybody got up for breakfast at the same time. And we came down to the dining room. And the chairs were in like a semicircle. And everybody sat in their chair. He read a verse from the Bible. He sang a verse of a hymn. And you knelt beside your chair for his prayer. And then we had breakfast. And he really and truly, he was devout. There was no doubt about it.
How long did that take?
Hmm?
How long did that take?
How long did it take? Yeah, not very long, Dusty.
10. What year did you marry Grandpa?
1934. In September of 1934. And your mom was born
Where did you get married?
at the Methodist Church down the corner.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
The one right by your house?
Yeah. See, in those days, people didn't have big weddings like they do now. You were lucky if you had money to pay the preacher.
Yeah. And then after that, right after that, you went back to
And
Indiana.
back to Shugrue. Grandpa, he had an apartment rented in this building where Aunt Lottie and what's his name? Bob. Upstairs apartment, furnished apartment.
And you were in East Chicago for how long?
Mhm.
How long were you in East Chicago?
Well, we were there about 6 years. And then we bought our house in Griffith. And we moved to Griffith, and we were there 7 years. And then we bought a farm. We were there all during the war years.
You were saving all that time so that you could buy the farm. Grandpa wanted to buy the farm,
Oh,
right?
yeah, oh, yeah.
That was his ambition, to be a farmer.
Well, we bought our home in Griffith and we had it fully paid when we bought the farm in Pennsylvania.
How much did you pay for the farm?
And when we sold our house in Griffith, we doubled. The price of property had gone up considerably. And when we sold the house in Griffith, we doubled what we paid for it. And when we bought the farm, we paid cash for the farm.
How much did you pay for it?
Would you believe $7,000
For how many acres?
for 120 acres? But we had the house fully paid for in Griffith, and we sold it for a profit. Yeah, and when we moved to the farm, we sold some timber, and that way we had money from that to buy the first tractor. And so, and the plow, and the harrow, and initially it was, we just started from that.
That would have been was that right after the war?
1947.
47, sure.
We
Well,
came back, he was gonna quit, and we were gonna buy the farm. And we came back, and we had an option to buy for a year. Because there was a certain, at that time, Social Security, he wanted to work a few more quarters so that when he had those quarters in, that would cover us as a family. So he stayed, we come back and had an option on the farm. Then a year later, we came back and paid for the farm. And we allowed her to, the lady that we bought it from, we allowed her to live on the farm another year while he worked this amount to equal whatever credits we had. So we really owned the farm in 46 and came back in 47. And that's when we came back.
Was farming pretty profitable for you?
Well, initially it was, we had to buy, we started buying cattle until we got a big enough herd to warrant going into the dairy business. I mean, you couldn't go in and expect to have a milk truck come and pick up 2 quarts of milk. You had to have enough cows, so. But we raised chickens, and we maintained a flock of about 300 chickens. And we had those as well as the dairy business.
What do you want?
And then when we went into the dairy business, we just kept increasing the herd, and buying more cows. And
All you have to do is make funny noises.
Yeah.
I would say yes,
How
because
many cows did you have?
we maintained a herd of about 25 when we were into the dairy
And
business.
was that considered a big farm or what?
No, not really. No, there were a lot of other farms that really went into it in a big way, but they also went and head over their heels all. We didn't do that. When we bought machinery, we bought a piece and paid for it. Then when we wanted another piece, we didn't. But we could have gone in and head over heels. But we didn't do it that way. That's how I would say.
Well, I can tell you this,
They were comfortable.
I don't know about profitability and it's none of my business, but I can tell you the family's punched on them unmercifully for years. Not that they begrudged it or didn't like it, I don't mean it that way, but
Well, there was always those big meals.
But
Well, now, how many of the relatives lived with you and worked there? It must have been, you work there, didn't you?
No.
No,
You didn't work there?
only the long boys.
The long boys, Pat and Jim and Bob. Bob worked for us. Well, a couple of, one of Lee's sons, me, was a hired hand 1 year. But they came in the summer when school was out and left when school started in the fall. But they were there, they stayed during harvest. But we paid them, we didn't pay them, we couldn't afford to pay them tremendous. But they had access to all those good meals, cookies and pie and cake. And the long boys in particular thought they were in heaven. Well, we better not. If you're going to record this, I don't want to.
No, go ahead. It's just for us.
It was just that their father, the long boy's father, was not the type to allow certain things. And when they were at our house, they had the privilege of eating all they wanted. If they wanted a bedtime snack in the evening before they went to bed, they were allowed to have it, and they thought they had died and gone to heaven.
Bo was a pain in the rear end.
Yeah.
I'll say it, she doesn't have to. He was hard on those boys. And, I mean, they didn't, well, you treated Irene like dirt.
Yeah. They were glad to go there.
You know, they just thought it was unbelievable.
Where did they sleep when you?
Well, we only had one boy at the time. Bob worked for us. I think Bob worked 2 summers. And Pat worked 1 summer. Then there was a period in between Pat and Jim where we had Phil's brother work. And then when Jim worked,
She's not going to Kazakhstan.
and then the summer after we had Jim as a hired gun was when we sold the dairy business.
It's fucked up and not anymore at all. But,
So you have went from 46 to 65.
We went in the dairy business in 48 and
Both of us.
sold out in 65.
enjoy that.
Grandpa was just too tired to do it anymore, and what?
Well, yes, and it was getting to the point where hired help, you know, I mean, you could no longer get hired help for $50 a month
Good enough
or
to eat?
$75 a month. They expected the minimum wage.
Good enough to eat?
And you know, our farm wasn't big enough, we couldn't increase our, we had the herd as big as it could get.
I'm thinking about ordering out for pizzas now.
It was just fun. So we did it.
They had a lot of regulation was put on it too. It was restrictive regulation.
But we had,
Hey, Karen?
when we started originally, we pulled the milk in an electric tank pipe. Well, then it was mandatory to have a bolt pipe. So we had that taken out, and we had this great big stainless steel bolt. Then after that, you were maybe supposed
Is it still on?
to have pipe.
It'll be the best part of the show, though.
Right onto the.
And went directly from the dairy down into the tank. And that was just, yeah.
Did you have that?
No, we didn't. We never had the pipeline milk.
Oh. I must have seen that at some other. I must have seen that at some other one.
So, anyway.
I am getting
So what Grandpa said to me, the day
Every so often.
that he went to the doctor for his physical, and he came home, and the doctor examined him and told him he had a tumor on the prostate. And when he came up the basement steps that day, I knew when I looked at him that he had received bad news, and he came in and sat down. And he said, Mom, he said, you know, I got bad news today. But he said, so be it. He said, I want you to know. He said, you know, we've had a good life. We raised our girls. They were educated. And he said, I want you to know that those years on the farm were the happiest years of my life. They were hard years. I mean, I was busy all the time. But when he said that, I thought, well,
Nikki.
It's Nikki.
Nicka.
Can you say Nikki?
Did you come
so
downstairs?
he did. But he always said, when he proposed to me, he said, now, if you don't want to live on the farm someday, speak now.